At the castle, a man walks in wearing his jacket. We soon find out that this isn't just any man. He's Cedric Maynard's, the Duke of Maynard. As he steps into the room, his voice rings out as he asks where the child who made the strange claim is. The butler and the maid both greet him with respect, welcoming him with a deep bow. The butler quickly explains that the child has already been taken to the inner drain room. This gets the Duke's attention, and he asks if the information is true this time. Without saying much else, he simply replies that it would be best to see it himself. He places one hand on his face, showing that he's trying to stay calm, then agrees to go check for himself. As he walks off, the butler bows once again and moves ahead to open the door for him. And just when we think this is going to be another regular encounter, the Duke lays eyes on the child inside the room, and his eyes widen. He stares for a moment, clearly caught off guard. His thoughts begin to race as he takes in the sight. A child with brown hair and brown eyes stands there, small and skinny like a stray cat. He walks closer, then kneels in front of the little girl. He calmly asks if she's the one claiming to be his child. She looks up and introduces herself as Lillian. He repeats her name, then asks if she has anything to show him. Any proof. And while it seems like a normal question, we're taken into the mind of our girl. She looks at the impossibly handsome man in front of her and knows exactly what he's asking. Evidence. Something that proves she's really the lost daughter of the Maynard family. She doesn't speak immediately. Instead, she bends down and scrambles on the ground, thinking to herself that yes, she does have proof. But sadly, she's not the main character in this story. Then, in a soft voice, she explains that she grew up in an orphanage and doesn't have much to offer. However, there's one thing she's always had with her since she was dropped at the orphanage. She reaches into her hand and stretches it forward, slowly revealing a pendant. She drops it into the Duke's hand. And just like that, we know her life is about to change forever. From being just another extra in a regular story, she's now stepping into the shoes of someone who might have been replaced by an imposter. But before we fully dive into what happens next, we're taken into a memory. Our girl is back at the orphanage, talking to someone named Swan. She turns to her and complains gently, reminding her that she didn't finish her food again. Then, in a calm and caring voice, she tells her that if she wants to be healthy, she has to eat everything. Swan, however, isn't having it. She holds her stomach and says she's already full and might get sick if she eats anymore. Our girl just smiles at this. In her thoughts, she admires the girl's tiny features. A cute little nose, small lips, and eyes so clear they remind her of a midsummer lake. Swan, their little princess at the orphanage, always seemed so special. And as if that wasn't sweet enough, Swan tries to feed Lillian instead, saying she can't finish her food and wants her to eat it. Her friend refuses to eat, and she knows if that continues, she'll be the one getting scolded. So, in a quiet yet firm way, she picks up the food herself and turns it into her mouth, telling her friend it's just for today. As a result, the other girl lights up with joy. At that moment, our girl starts thinking. She suspects that the director must be planning something for Swan. After all, she's beautiful, like a true heroine out of a storybook. If anyone deserved the spotlight in this world, it would be Swan. We then find out something interesting. Our girl and Swan arrived at the orphanage on the same day. They've always slept side by side ever since they were small. That bond between them seems to have only grown stronger over the years. In the next scene, we get to a night that Lillian will never forget. She steps into the room and is shocked to see Swan bleeding from her mouth. Panic rises quickly, and she rushes over, calling out her name, ready to fetch the teacher. But Swan stops her. Confused and afraid, she holds Swan's hands and tries to understand. That's when Swan says she needs to tell her something very important. And just like that, everything changes. That night, Swan shares a secret that sounds almost too big to be real. She's the lost daughter of Duke Maynard. We're as surprised as our girl is. She doesn't know how to react. She wonders if this could actually be true. Yet Swan speaks with so much certainty and even says she has proof. Covered in blood and weak, Swan talks about how she had always wanted to meet her father. The director had promised she could go to the Duke's estate. However, just when she's about to finish, Lillian interrupts, crying and shaking her head. She pleads for her not to go, insisting that she will, so Swan should stop talking like that. Swan, already smiling with teary eyes, gently reminds her of the things they used to talk about: ribbons, dolls, prima donnas, and all the tales about high society. Those were happy moments. Then she says something heartbreaking. If she doesn't make it, our girl should take her place and live out both their dreams. And here comes the part that breaks our hearts even more. Swan asks her to do everything she never got the chance to do. She repeats her wish. Lillian should live an incredible life. Time passes, and we now find our girl standing in front of the Duke, her hand holding out the pendant. Her thoughts race back to that night, to Swan's final words. She reminds herself that she's here, just like Swan wanted, at the Duke's estate. The Duke then speaks to his butler, asking him to take the child to her room. The butler bows and agrees. Finally, the Duke turns to her and gives her the warmest words anyone could ask for, welcoming her back home. We're introduced to a land called Halu, a rich and fertile region that becomes the center of a long-standing problem. Originally, it had been part of a princess's dowry when she got married into another kingdom. However, 10 years ago, after her marriage ended in divorce, this land turned into a serious issue between the two countries. The reason is simple. The land is just too good to give up. As a result, the emperor decides to take action. He chooses the empire's strongest knight at the time to become the supreme commander and sends him to war. Now, here's where the story gets painful. This knight has just started a new chapter in life. He's newly married and his wife is pregnant. But he barely leaves for battle when he receives terrible news. His wife has passed away, and worse, their child has gone missing. The story goes deeper. That very same woman, Duchess Agnes Maynard, who had given birth to a child named Elune after sending her husband off to fight, collapses when she hears the news that her baby is gone. As if that wasn't enough, she soon passes away from the shock. Meanwhile, her husband, Duke Maynard, is still on the battlefield. Despite hearing that his wife is gone and his child has disappeared, he is not allowed to return home because of the emperor's command. So we see a heartbreaking moment. He sits down in tears, completely helpless. Still, he does what little he can. He orders everyone to find his missing child, no matter what. He keeps saying that the child must be found. And just like that, 10 years go by. In the next scene, we're taken into the grand ducal estate. Inside one of the rooms, the maids are all lined up, bowing low. They welcome their master and a lady who has arrived. The woman they are greeting is Mary, the head maid of the Maynard ducal estate. She bows back and tells them that all the former workers of the manor are happy to welcome him back after 10 long years. Yes, Duke Maynard has finally returned. He responds that it's been a long time and asks if everyone has been doing well. Then, as he looks up, something hits him. In his mind, he sees his wife and their child standing there. It's like a picture frozen in time. Two people who were supposed to be in this mansion, but are no longer there. The pain comes back. He says that he wants to visit the annex for a moment, and the butler replies right away, saying, "Yes, my lord." As he walks away, his thoughts grow heavy again. He wonders if he will ever be able to find the child he's been searching for all these years. After all this time, he hasn't even been able to confirm if the child is alive or not. A part of him starts to believe that maybe the child is no longer living. However, when he opens a picture of his wife and looks at her face, something inside him refuses to give up. He thinks that if he lets go now, he may never see that child again. So he keeps moving forward. He continues meeting different candidates, and now someone new appears. Lillian. We're taken straight into a quiet, candlelit office where butler Stefan stands by a tea table, gently turning some tea for the Duke. The room is calm, but the conversation between both men is anything but. As the steam rises from the cup, Stefan softly says that, so far, she has been the most suitable. At this point, we realize something important. He still isn't fully sure if the child is a real lady. Hearing this, the Duke looks up and asks what he is basing that on. Without wasting a breath, Stefan reminds him of the locket. He says that ever since he brought the madam's locket, he thought the Duke would be certain by now. And just like that, we learn something shocking. This isn't just any locket. It's Agnes's locket, the same one that went missing with the child. Yet despite this discovery, the Duke doesn't look convinced. He explains that he only said she was the most suitable because of that locket. It may be Agnes's, yes, but the child, she doesn't look like her mother, or him. Instead, she is small, fragile, and her appearance shows clear signs of hardship. Her brown eyes are large, almost taking up half her face. And just when we think we've gotten to something deep, the Duke admits that he has met so many children like her before, children who had no real proof. However, something makes this case different. This girl brought evidence, but even then he wonders aloud, what if she just picked up a random locket and has been holding on to it? After all, she doesn't look anything like Agnes or him. At this moment, Stefan quietly says something that stops everything. He thought they had the same eyes. This catches the Duke off guard. His eyes widen, and he asks, his eyes? Is that what he means? Stefan goes on to say that when the Duke was young, he also had eyes like that. Brown with a hint of green. A soft reminder that even back then he truly should have known. This detail causes the Duke to pause and think. He then asks where the child came from. Stefan presents a piece of paper, something they found among the girl's belongings. It's a guardianship certificate. The Duke picks it up, reading it closely. Apparently, the child came from an orphanage. The butler adds that normally the director of such places keeps the certificate. However, in some reputable ones, it's handed over to the child so that they can choose their future home. Moreover, the timeline of the child's disappearance matches what's written in the certificate. And now, the big question hangs in the air. Could this child truly be theirs? As if that wasn't enough, the Duke's mind goes back to Agnes's face. It's like a flash from the past, slowly connecting to the present. Still, he keeps a calm face and tells Stefan that they'll only know the full truth once the child wakes up. The butler agrees. That seems to be the only way. We're then told that the child must have suffered a lot before getting here. In fact, she collapsed while heading back to her room because of a sudden fever. But there's some hope. Stefan explains that the doctor already checked on her. Thankfully, she's not seriously hurt and should wake up soon. The Duke nods, saying he understands. Then he slowly rises to his feet and turns around. And this is where things shift a little. As he turns away, Stefan gives a small smile. It's clear now he's worried after all. Meanwhile, in the next scene, we find ourselves in a much softer space. This time, we're in our girl's room. The room is still, the night is quiet, and she is fast asleep. But as she lays on the bed, we notice something that tugs at the heart. There are tears in her eyes. And even in sleep, her mind isn't resting. She's thinking of Swan. In the next scene, we see our female lead lying weakly on a bed. Her eyes are closed, and it looks like she's sleeping, but her mind isn't fully at rest. She starts thinking quietly to herself. She feels pain, her body is dizzy, and although she's sweating, she also feels very cold. That mix of feelings makes her wonder if she has a fever. Just then, she hears someone call out her name. Confused and still with her eyes closed, she begins to wonder who it could be. She thinks to herself that maybe it's Swan. As the moment stretches, she slowly opens her eyes just a little and sees a hand reaching out toward her. Everything is still a bit blurry because she's dizzy, but her thoughts are clear. She wonders again if Swan has come to find her. The hand finally touches her forehead, and something about that simple action makes her begin to cry. Her hand slowly reaches out to hold the other, and with tears already in her eyes, she whispers that she misses the person. However, after saying that, she quickly falls back asleep, too weak to stay awake. Now, here's the twist. The hand she thought belonged to Swan actually belongs to the Duke. Surprised by what just happened, he pulls his hand away. He had come to see the girl because he heard that her fever had gone down, but after touching her, it became clear that something wasn't right. He adjusts the chair close to her bed and quietly takes a seat, clearly unsure of what to do next. He looks at her again. Something still feels off. He wonders if her fever really went down like he was told. Slowly, he places his hand on her forehead again. At that moment, she murmurs softly, saying she misses someone. He's taken aback for a second. Miss who? That question pops into his mind. He also notices that even though she's small and fragile, her heartbeat is steady. There's something unusual about this whole situation. Without saying much else, he loosens the tie around his neck. The room is quiet, but his mind isn't. He admits that even though it's not confirmed whether she's his long-lost daughter, he finds it hard to watch her in such pain. Something about her touches his heart, and for now he chooses to stay by her side. Meanwhile, the story doesn't stop there. As she remains unconscious on the bed, her mind starts drifting into memories of the past. We're taken back to a moment at the Mayfield Orphanage. In this memory, she's standing quietly behind a door, carefully listening to a tense conversation. It's between the orphanage director and Master Curtis. The director sounds very angry. He shouts, saying the girl has passed away, and demands to know how she was being looked after. The manager, trying to stay calm, says they did their best but explains that Swan was too weak. The director isn't having it. He slams his hand on the table in frustration and reminds him that they've been looking after Swan for no less than 10 years. Now here's where the shock comes in. We learn that this man once found out Swan was actually the missing Duchess. When he discovered that the girl had ended up in their care, he was overjoyed. But now, just when the Duke has returned, the girl is gone, and their plan to gain from it is ruined. The director continues yelling angrily, clearly upset that everything has fallen apart. Then the manager tries to calm the situation by saying they still have the object. When asked what he means, he says that if they show it, it should be enough to keep the truth hidden. From behind the door, the girl listening to this starts thinking about that object. She remembers something Swan once talked about, a pendant that had their parents' portraits. It suddenly makes sense. They're looking at something important, but from where she's standing, she can't see it clearly. The director holds a pendant tightly in his hands. From the look on his face, it's clear that this tiny object means more than gold. He says that 10 years ago, they found it next to a little girl. And right at that moment, he knew Swan was no ordinary child. She was the lost Duchess. Now, as he stares at the pendant, his thoughts begin to drift. We're taken into his imagination, and what we see there shocks us. He imagines the day the prince would have arrived to take the lost Duchess home. In this dream of his, he tells the Duke that they should be grateful for taking care of the missing girl all these years. And as if that wasn't enough, he thinks about demanding not just a reward, but even 10 years' worth of support. In this made-up scene, the Duke agrees, gives him money, and even becomes the orphanage sponsor. He pictures himself gaining everything he ever wanted, all because of Swan. But back in the real world, things are different. His face changes. His hands move slowly to his head as he remembers something painful. He says the plan was never supposed to go this way. For everything to work, Swan needed to stay alive. But now she's gone, and that dream is over. Even though the plan has fallen apart, he's not giving up. His eyes burn with a new idea. He says it doesn't matter if the girl is fake. As long as she looks like the Duke's lost daughter, it's enough. With this thought in mind, he believes even an orphan can become a duchess. Then, without wasting time, he orders for another girl to be prepared. She must have black hair, just like Swan. At this exact moment, something happens. Unknown to them, someone has been listening at the door. We see our girl, and as she hears every single word, her heart breaks. She can't believe what she just heard. They plan to use Swan, even though she's gone. Without thinking, Lillian turns around and runs away. Inside, the director suddenly pauses. He turns to Master Curtis and asks if he heard something outside. Curtis replies, looking confused. He doesn't think anyone would be outside at that time. It's Mew time after all. But the director shrugs and says it must have been his imagination. Meanwhile, outside, we follow our girl as she runs. Her thoughts are loud. How could they do something like this? Swan has not even been gone for 3 full days, yet they're already planning to replace her, just to get a reward. Tears stream down her cheeks as she hides in a corner, heartbroken and angry. And just when we think we've seen it all, she makes a vow in her heart. She says she will fulfill Swan's wish. No one will take her place. No one will use her passing like this. She decides she will become Swan. She will make everything Swan dreamed of come true. In the next scene, we're introduced to our girl as she stands quietly in the corridor. Her eyes are still wet with tears. From the look on her face, we can tell that she's deep in thought. She believes that if the director hadn't been so greedy, Swan would still be alive. If only they had taken her to the Maynard Duchy earlier. At this moment, she starts thinking about a risky plan. In order to replace Swan with a fake, she must be seen as the daughter of Maynard. But there's one big problem. She doesn't share any blood with the family. She wonders if her face alone would be enough to trick them. As if that wasn't enough, she also compares herself to Swan, saying she isn't as pretty. Then another thought crosses her mind. The necklace that belongs to the director, it might be the key to making her plan work. However, sneaking into the director's office without being caught sounds almost impossible. She knows she'll need to think of a smart plan. As she keeps thinking about all this, she slowly walks into the dining room where the rest of the children are. The mood changes a little when one of the girls notices her and happily calls her name. She asks where she went, adding that she thought she wasn't going to come back. She also mentions that the food was nice today and even says she saved some bread for her. There's warmth in her voice as she tells her to dress warmly because it's cold outside. Our girl answers briefly, saying she was only away for a moment. Then, when they try to offer her food, she tells them she's not that hungry. Suddenly, the moment turns sour. A red-haired boy stands up and rudely tells everyone to stop caring about the dog and come help fix their clothes. It's clear that his words are meant to be hurtful. Another boy, who has dark hair, reacts right away, clearly annoyed. He says the red-haired one is at it again. The tension grows, but instead of saying anything, our girl just stares at the older boy. We get to know that this red-haired boy is Theo, and he's the oldest among them at 14. He looks directly at her and tells her to stop crying over someone who's already gone. He adds that if someone is weak, they don't survive. If they're lucky, they get adopted. To him, it doesn't really matter either way. The dark-haired boy can't hold it in anymore. He speaks up, asking if he knows how hurt Lillian is right now. But Theo doesn't care. He keeps going, saying he's not going to cry with her. Instead, he tells her to pull herself together. He says if she's not planning to follow Swan, then she should at least eat something. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he drops a shocking piece of news. He says that Rose has already been called into the director's office. That's when our girl suddenly reacts. She dashes toward him, her voice filled with surprise as she asks if it's true. Theo says Curtis took Rose earlier. She lets go of his shirt, lowering her head. Her thoughts quickly shift to Rose, the one with dark hair. It hits her hard that she might be the next one. As the room gets quiet, another girl looks at Theo and calls him brother, then asks if he's already found someone to replace Swan. Our girl suddenly begins to cough, and the reaction is instant. Theo, who is right there, immediately asks what's wrong and if she's okay. Before we even get a response, someone from nearby hands him a loaf of bread, saying it was saved especially for her. Without thinking twice, he collects it from the person. Now, just when we think he's going to give it to her, he shockingly puts it straight into his mouth and takes a bite. This move confuses everyone, and someone nearby yells out in surprise, questioning why he would do such a thing. As if that wasn't enough, while still chewing, he casually tells her to eat her meals and not cause a scene or give him a headache. Then he stretches out the already bitten bread toward her. However, she doesn't make any move to take it. Instead, he turns to look behind him and says, if she's going to start looking after things like that, then she should take care of him too. At that moment, the person nearby asks, in disbelief, if Theo actually meant what he just said. However, Lillian keeps her cool and calmly tells him to eat it because she's fine. Without waiting for any more drama, she begins walking away. We're shocked as we watch her walk off, and he tries to stop her by calling her name. Still, she doesn't turn back. In her mind, she feels sick to her stomach. It's as if the world around her doesn't care. She wonders how everyone can act so calm, especially when it hasn't been long since someone died. Tears begin to fall down her cheeks as she runs out of the room. As she rushes away, someone suddenly calls out to her. A hand grabs hers, and when she turns around, she's surprised to see that it's Theo. She stares at him, and in her mind, she wonders how he could look at her without even a hint of sadness. He then asks her what her problem is, and whether it's because he took a bite of that potato. He even places one hand on his head and says he didn't want to come looking for her, but the others insisted. She holds his hand and thinks to herself that it feels cold. He wasn't looking for her out of concern, just following what others wanted. He then brushes his hair back and finally admits he was wrong. He explains that her behavior annoyed him and tells her to stop being stubborn. He urges her to return, saying it's almost morning, and warns that if she stays out too long, but before he finishes, she cuts in and calls his name. A thought suddenly crosses her mind. She wonders if she can use him. And then, just like that, she drops the bomb. She says she's leaving the orphanage. He is shocked and asks what she means. She tells him she wants to go look for her parents. Now, this is where things get heated. He reminds her that they don't have parents, and by now, she should already know that. He adds that there might have been a reason why they were abandoned. She snaps back, asking if he expects her to accept that after staying here for 10 years. She insists that she's wasting time and that she needs to go search for them. According to her, anywhere is better than this place. She thinks in her mind that the directors and teachers only use the kids for their own benefit. She silently wishes that they would be made to face the consequences of their actions. Surprisingly, he tells her to go, but warns her not to get caught trying to escape or cause trouble. At this point, she turns to him and asks what about him. She points out that he wasn't adopted this time either and reminds him that his 15th birthday is coming soon. In her thoughts, we learn something new. If he isn't adopted by the time he turns 15, he'll be sent to work on a farm. And it becomes clear, she's got a plan. She looks at him and says she'll help him so he doesn't end up on the farm. He looks at her, clearly caught off guard, and asks what she means. That's when she calmly says he'll have to help her in return. We see our girl making a bold move by telling Theo that he would need to help her. In return, she promised to do something that could completely change their lives. She says she will bring him his guardianship certificate. According to her, having that certificate means that not even the director can sell them off so easily. She adds that without this paper, the director doesn't even have the right to control them. We see Theo looking at her with wide eyes, clearly shocked, and he asks how she plans to help him. She tells him again that she'll get the certificate, but she needs just one thing from him. He has to help her get into the director's office. Once she's inside, she'll take their guardianship certificate, keep Swan sick and dependent, and then leave quietly. At this point, Theo touches his neck with one hand, looking unsure. He repeats her plan in question form, clearly needing confirmation. He asks if she really expects him to help her sneak into the director's office and wonders if she has any plan at all. She answers quickly, saying she does have an idea, but the problem is that it might be too dangerous, so she's been thinking of a safer way instead. However, time is running out. Theo reminds her that the director will be leaving tomorrow. Then he tries to remember where exactly the man is going. He says something about an invitation. Right away, she starts thinking hard. Putting one hand on her chin, she figures it must be for the Maynard Duke's return banquet. It's to be held 4 days from now on the Sabbath. Then she begins to realize the ugly truth. They plan to take someone else instead of Swan and deceive the Duke. The thought makes her upset, and she tells Theo they have to do it the next day. He agrees, but warns her to be careful. He reminds her that he doesn't like getting caught, especially since her face gets really scary when she's serious. Then he asks again to confirm, and she repeats that they're doing it tomorrow. In her mind, she decides that everything will be finished before the director returns. The next morning arrives, and the scene opens with Master Curtis bowing to the director. He respectfully wishes him a safe trip. The director nods and tells him to make sure everything stays in order. Then he enters his carriage and leaves. Meanwhile, not too far away, 2 figures are hiding behind a wall. It's Lillian and Theo. They're carefully watching the director's carriage as it disappears from sight. One of them asks if he's really gone, and the other confirms it. There's no doubt about it, the man is out. She turns to her partner and asks if he's ready. His answer comes without delay. Of course, he's ready. Then she reminds him that she already explained everything and now wishes him success. With that, she dashes off in a hurry. As he watches her run, he can't help but think to himself. He wonders why she always has to use hard words like wishing for success. It's just like her to talk like that. And with that, the plan begins. He places one hand on his head and quietly mutters to himself, wondering if he should go too. But right after, he quickly decides in his mind that he doesn't like the idea anyway. Then, almost as if something triggers a memory, he begins to recall what happened the night before. During that moment, our girl had turned to him and reminded him about last winter, saying there was a time they couldn't eat bread because they didn't have flow. He had replied, saying he remembered clearly and that even during summer, they barely got to eat. As if that wasn't enough, she also added, explaining that there had been an explosion at the flow factory back then, which made it impossible for them to distribute anything. Now, in the present, he remembers what she said and suddenly smiles. His thoughts shift again as he begins to think deeply. According to him, when people are stuck in an enclosed space, even the tiniest spark of fire could turn them all into a bomb. We get to know that he actually finds this strange idea quite fascinating. His mind drifts further as he wonders how such powerful energy could come from such a small body. He even remembers how her eyes look green when seen up close. Then comes a striking moment. Holding a stone and some matches in his hand, he strikes a fire and watches it burn. Still lost in his thoughts, he remembers how, under the moonlight, they shone even bluer. He admits silently to himself that it was terrifying. But instead of fear, it pushes him to one conclusion. Our girl must be really desperate. Even though he claims not to like the idea, he tells himself he has to do what must be done. Without wasting more time, he throws the lit stone straight at the factory that contains flow. The stone breaks through the glass and lands inside. The moment it touches the floor, an explosion goes off. Immediately, there is panic all over the orphanage. People begin to shout and question what the commotion is about. We hear voices asking if something just exploded and demanding to know what's going on. Right then, the master also reacts with shock, wondering what the children have just done. In the next scene, we see our female lead hiding behind a door and peeping. Our girl is fully aware that the teacher has left the orphanage, and while watching from her position, she thinks Theo has done a good job. Meanwhile, he stands outside, calmly thinking to himself if the explosion was loud enough. Back inside, she's hoping he can buy them more time. Quickly, she gets to work on picking the lock. Eventually, she opens it and says it's done. As she returns the pin to her hair, she thinks about how her lock-picking skills have grown rusty because she has received fewer punishments lately. She tells herself that it took too long and that she needs to find what she came for and leave immediately. She steps into the office and plans to search carefully, starting with the closest spots. She begins checking around systematically. The first thing on her mind is Theo's and her guardianship certificate. She finds a book that contains both. Seeing them inside, she comments on how they've kept all the certificates in one place and that it was easy to find. However, things get tricky again. She looks over to the bookshelf, checks the desks, and even looks under them, but finds absolutely nothing. This leaves her thinking, where could Swan's certificate be? It's supposed to be somewhere safe and hidden in the same room. As she looks around again, determined not to leave without answers, we can feel the pressure rising. We see our girl deep in thought as she continues searching the room. We quickly realize that she believes something important is hidden there. Her mind tells her that if it truly is important, then it wouldn't be placed somewhere easy to find. As she looks around, she reminds herself that she came prepared, yet even after checking carefully, there's no sign of a safe, no jewelry box, and not even a single fancy drawer. She lets out a few words saying there's really nothing here. Then, as if annoyed, she clenches her fist and admits that after all the trouble she went through to get him, this cannot be all. However, she isn't ready to leave just yet. Instead, her thoughts shift to a memory. We see the image of Swan calling her name in the past. The words Swan once told her echo in her head, how she's good at everything but lacks perseverance. At that time, she had asked what that meant, and Swan had explained that she struggles to stay calm when pressure hits. She had tried to defend herself, saying she always does her best, But Swan had calmly pointed out that the moment something goes wrong, she panics and begins to doubt herself. Back then, Swan told her to trust her own judgment because he believed in her. Now, as we watch her recall all of this, we get the sense that those words are still fresh in her heart. She agrees quietly in her thoughts, remembering clearly that Swan did say something like that. She doesn't give up. She decides her judgment isn't wrong. She just hasn't found the answer yet. And with that, she walks over to the bookshelf and starts checking from there. In the next scene, the sky has gone dark. Night has fallen. We see Theo speak as he receives a document from Lillian. He mentions the paper, asking if that's what she was talking about. Our girl answers and points out that his name is clearly written on it. In fact, she says it 3 times, reminding him that the name Theoa is right there on the page. Theoa looks at it and says it looks strange. As she looks at him, we find out from her thoughts that she had noticed a hidden mechanism in the bookshelf earlier. That's how she was able to find Swan's keep safe. Then, in one simple move, she pulls out a gem and throws it toward him. She tells him to take the 2 gems. He asks what they are, and she explains that she found them in the director's office and took them. She admits that they probably aren't worth much, but they should be enough to cover some expenses for when they travel. She then adds that once they're out, they'll just be orphans with nowhere to go. And surviving without any money wouldn't be easy. What happens next makes us smile a little. He's clearly surprised and says it's unlike her to go around helping them, especially with that awful attitude she usually carries. But she doesn't let it slide. She tells him to look in the mirror and asks who the rare one really is. They both laugh after that, and the mood softens. Just when we think the scene might end there, he turns his face slightly and admits something. He says he never thought she would look out for him like that, especially when he's not even Swan. She stands in front of Theo, trying her best to stay calm. She doesn't say anything at first, but in her mind, she's wondering why things always have to end with a fight. She just wants peace. Just this once. She wishes they could part on good terms. Then he asks if she's leaving now. She answers simply that she is, and returns the question, asking if he's staying. He touches his cheek, and then the side of his neck as he explains that he'll be leaving soon too. However, for him, this place is different. The kids here aren't just kids. They're like family. So it's not easy for him to just walk away without thinking it through. He'll leave when he's ready. As she listens, she stares at him. And in her mind, she begins to see just how different they are. She has nothing left to hold on to. Not even a reason to stay. That gap between them has grown even wider. And for a brief moment, she remembers Swan. But she doesn't let herself feel too much. She reminds herself that there's no time for emotions. She needs to move fast. He then tells her to look at something nearby. But instead of doing so, she calmly says that she's leaving now. As she begins walking away, he calls her name, making her stop and look back. And just like that, he wishes her good luck. She then opens the door and walks out, ready to face whatever comes next. In the next scene, we follow her as she decides to reach the Duke of Maynard before the director does. To make that happen, she sneaks onto a food supply cart heading to the capital that very day. The road is long, and the wheels of the cart make a steady sound as they roll over the dirt path. The journey feels like it will never end. While dozing off during the trip, she dreams about Swan, the one she always called the princess of Mayfield Orphanage, her Swan. She feels sorry for the times she pretended those fairy tale stories didn't matter. Looking back, she admits to herself that Swan was always meant to be taken in by a noble family while she was just plain our girl. That difference was something she could never accept, so instead of being happy for her, she kept her distance. Because deep down, she felt she didn't belong in that kind of story. Now, she wishes she had just been honest with her, just once. But now isn't the time to dwell on the past. She tells herself she's almost there, just a little more. As the cart nears the Capitol gate, her eyes land on a familiar sign on the castle wall. It's the same emblem as the lily on the locket. That tiny detail makes her heart race. When the carriage stops, she wastes no time. She quickly slips out without being noticed. From a distance, she watches the food supplier talking to a guard. She tells herself to stay calm. She knows exactly what to say, and she plans to act like she belongs there. The moment the cart fully stops, she walks toward the guard. However, he immediately blocks her path, telling her that she shouldn't be there and that she should go back. But she doesn't step back. She firmly says she has come to see the Duke. The guard starts to speak again, clearly not taking her seriously, but before he can finish, she brings out the pendant and holds it up. And with a calm voice, she pleads to meet the Duke. In the next scene, we're brought right into the castle where something beautiful is already happening. Our girl, all dressed up, stands quietly while the maids surround her in awe. One of them looks at her with wide eyes and says, "She looks so stunning." Then, right beside her, Mary, who is the head of the maids, wipes her tears gently with a napkin. She looks emotional and says she never thought she would see the day she'd dress her up like this in the mansion. As if that wasn't enough, another maid giggles a little and points out that Mary has been so emotional lately. But Mary doesn't seem to mind. She continues speaking with a warm smile, saying the girl is just too cute, well-mannered, and so dignified. It's at this moment we get to see what's really on our female lead's mind. Our girl, as quiet as she appears, is full of thoughts. She finds it hard to get used to this new life. Earlier that morning, the moment she woke up, the maids had rushed in like they had been waiting all night. She remembers how one of them had quickly said they would get her cleaned up right away. They had gently washed her, dried her, and treated her like she was someone very important. In the middle of that memory, Mary speaks again and tells her that breakfast would be served in bed today. As if that's not enough, she also says she can pick any dress she likes. Moreover, while she eats, the maids would take care of her hair, so there's no need to rush. Right after that, a tray is placed in front of her, and she looks at the food. In her thoughts, she quietly admits that they are really treating her like a duchess. So, she starts to eat while they begin to do her hair. Then something funny happens. One maid says she's just too cute, but another one quickly corrects her, saying that's rude. Meanwhile, the first one, who we now know as Sally, thinks to herself that they need to pick out lots of lovely dresses for her. Right after, she says that the short haircut suits her. Our girl replies shyly with a thank you, and the maid tells her her name is Nisha. This is where we learn that Nisha is actually from the Duke of Maynard's estate. As they continue pampering her, Sally speaks up again, saying that her hands and mouth are so tiny and adorable. Then Sophie, another maid, joins in, saying her small statue is just too cute. And just when we think they're done, all three maids look at her and silently agree. If she grows up like this, she'll become an amazing beauty. Still, in the middle of all these sweet compliments, Lillian is lost in her thoughts again. She decides she'll keep her hair short for now. Becoming beautiful isn't her goal, but she tells herself that if Swan had grown up, she would have looked like a perfect doll. And since she's meant to be her stand-in, she feels she has to grow up looking just as beautiful. Because they said short hair looks cute, she figures she'll keep it that way. But then again, Swan had such pretty long hair. She begins to doubt herself, wondering what to do. She knows deep down that she shouldn't let her guard down. After all, she hasn't been officially recognized as a daughter yet, and she tells herself not to trust or rely on anyone. As her thoughts settle, we see Mary once again. This time, she gently lifts her up and asks if she's done changing. Our girl responds quietly. Then Mary smiles and says she will now show her around the estate. Carrying her like a precious gem, she introduces herself fully, saying she's the head of the maids in the estate. Our young lead answers back softly, telling her that she's Lillian and she's 10 years old. Mary, with a bright smile, thanks Lillian for the introduction, calling her name Lovely. Our girl, however, feels a bit uneasy. She thinks to herself that she's no longer a child and is uncomfortable with the way they treat her, as though she were 5 years old. Still, she decides to compliment Mary, saying that her name sounds like a bell. Mary, surprised and pleased, thanks her and insists that everyone is happy to have her there. The other maids stand by, observing but not saying much. Our girl, however, can't help but wonder why they treat her so oddly. She thinks that every time they speak, they either look awkward or overly emotional. Something doesn't feel right to her, and she can't help but be puzzled by the Duke's behavior. Our girl's thoughts drift to Duke Maynard. She remembers the day before, lying in bed, waking up feeling disoriented. When she opens her eyes, she's surprised to see Duke Maynard standing beside her. He comments that her fever has gone down a bit. Startled, she sits up quickly, calling him Duke. His reaction is immediate. His eyes widen, and he places a hand on his face as if shocked by her words. She notices this, thinking to herself that his reaction seems strange, almost upset. The Duke then asks her how she's feeling, and she tells him she's fine. She tries to get up, but the Duke stops her, saying there's no need. Instead, he tells her to lie down and assures her that someone will come to check on her. With that, he leaves, leaving her in confusion. Still in Mary's arms, she can't shake off her thoughts. She wonders why she hasn't seen Duke Maynard since that morning. He must have stayed by her side the whole time she was asleep, yet she feels unsure if she might have said something embarrassing in her sleep. She dismisses the thought, though, trying not to be too hard on herself. But her mind still lingers on the idea that spoiled children are often disliked. She thinks about Swan, who she believes would have been loved by everyone if she were in her place. She reminds herself that she came here to do what Swan couldn't, yet she still doesn't understand what the Duke really thinks of her. She wishes she could know his true feelings. As she continues to think, she notices something outside the window. Curious, she asks Mary what it is, though her mind is still a whirl of questions about her situation. Previously, our girl was being carried by the window, looking outside at a distant building. She wonders aloud, asking what it could be. Sophie, standing nearby, explains that it's the annex, but reassures her that it's not a place the young child needs to worry about. Sally, smiling, offers to show our girl around the main house first, noting that it's easy to get lost in there. Sally then suggests, with a friendly tone, that they can visit the annex later if she is interested. She asks, "Would you like to see the garden? Maynard's garden is beautiful, even in winter." Lillian, still curious about the annex, presses, asking what exactly is there. Despite her concerns, she agrees to see the garden, saying yes to Sally with a smile. Inside her mind, Lillian is still puzzled. She senses something is being hidden from her, though she can't understand why. Meanwhile, outside, the Duke is engaged in a sword practice with Isaac. The two are in the middle of a fierce fight when the Duke calls Isaac's name. Isaac responds, "Yes, sir," as the fight continues. Suddenly, the Duke asks Isaac if he has any children before swiftly knocking Isaac to the ground with a well-placed stroke of his sword. Isaac on the ground humorously asks if the Duke only brought it up because Isaac is still single. The Duke, unfazed, casually replies that one doesn't need to be married to have children. Isaac, standing up, wisely remarks that the Duke must be asking about the young lady. He goes on to mention that she's sharp and impressive for finding her way there after reading the newspaper article. Isaac mentions how everyone is in a frenzy just to catch a glimpse of her. The Duke, however, seems unsure. He says that there's still a lot of talk, but he doesn't know if she's really his daughter. Isaac, folding his arms, reminds the Duke that she did bring the pendant, and that should be enough proof. The Duke, nodding, admits that he wants to believe it too, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. The Duke reflects on his daughter's mysterious disappearance. He recalls how she wasn't lost in an accident, but kidnapped. There was no ransom, and no one knows why she was taken. He remembers Agnes's words telling him not to search for the child until Cedric returned, warning against provoking anyone involved. This, the Duke realizes, is why the case was handled as a simple disappearance, not a kidnapping. Isaac listens intently as the Duke expresses his suspicions. He worries that if this is treated as a disappearance, a thief could impersonate the woman, and having the pendant would only make the deception easier. Just as the Duke finishes, Sir Cosmo unexpectedly joins the conversation, saying that this is why the Duke had him investigate the orphanage where the young lady came from. The Duke agrees, saying that he can't afford to get too attached just yet. He fears that if the real daughter were to return, it would hurt both children. Isaac, putting a hand on his chin, thoughtfully wonders how such a person guarded the bedroom all night. He looks at the Duke and asks, "Are you really not considering taking her in as your daughter?" The Duke struggles with his thoughts, Then he says that he wasn't sure how to treat the child, feeling that he had been too cautious. He admits to Isaac that he had never stopped to consider what the child truly needed. Isaac, understanding the weight of hesitation, tells the Duke that fear often leads to choices they regret. Just as he says this, the Duke tells him to pick up his sword. Isaac, looking around, jokes that his sword is way over there. As he glances behind the Duke, he notices a shadow that doesn't seem familiar. Isaac asks, "Sir, is there anyone else coming?" The Duke, unaware of anything unusual, says he doesn't believe so. Meanwhile, our girl, still hidden in the bushes, recalls the moment the maid tried to stop her from going to the annex. She begins to realize the truth about the Duke's intentions. Feeling heartbroken, she dashes out from the bushes, thinking that the Duke never intended to accept her. In another scene, Mary speaks to our girl, asking if she's lost her honeydew. She responds, explaining that she probably dropped it in the garden. She promises to find it, and Mary suggests they look together. She did not want to get into any trouble, so insisted that she'll search alone for a bit, and will ask for help if needed. The maids agree that our girl is too kind, and she heads off to look for the honeydew. As she searches, she makes her way towards the annex, where she hides in the bushes, overhearing the Duke and Isaac's conversation. The Duke, speaking to Isaac, says not to worry too much. He believes the child is most likely the right candidate. Lillian, hearing this, understands the situation completely. She stands alone, tears falling down her face. Her heart aches as she realizes that the Duke never truly intended to accept her. Just as she's lost in her thoughts, Nisha calls out for her, searching for her in the garden. Our girl, walking away, reflects on her own foolishness for letting her guard down. She finally calls out to Sophie, who is relieved to find her. Sophie tells her that she shouldn't be outside for too long, especially since she's still recovering from her cold. Sophie notices that her ears are cold, but admires her ability to find her way. Our girl smiles, and as Sophie reaches out to her, she then thinks to herself how kind everyone at the Maynard estate has been to her. Sophie then takes her hand, urging her to come back to the mansion, and she agrees. As they walk together, our girl's thoughts return to the only person who truly loves her, Swan. Only Swan has shown her the kind of care and love she desperately needs. 2 days later, Sally smiles and says that work has become much more enjoyable. Sophie, sitting beside her, agrees and points out that the master seems more relaxed now that Lady has arrived. Despite being busy, he always checks in on her after she falls asleep. Nisha, who is cleaning a cup, recalls how the master hadn't slept for days after returning from Halu, desperately searching for Lady. She adds that preparing for the victory party alone must have been exhausting for him. Sophie asks, almost teasing, if the party is today. Sally nods and says that Stefan has been working hard on the tailcoat. Even with everything going on, he still made time to search for Lady. Now maybe he's sitting down knitting something. Sally then remarks how relieved she is that the Duke didn't get sick. It's unfortunate that Lady's return has only just happened. Still, she's clever and remembers the entire mansion layout in one go. Furthermore, she is calm and dignified, never complaining despite being alone in the mansion. Sally finds it remarkable, especially when she remembers our girl's comment about the mansion's molding looking so delicious, like a gingerbread house from a fairy tale. Sally is shocked, but Sophie thinks it's perfect, and they both agree that Lillian deserves full marks for cuteness. Sally continues, saying that even though the master doesn't show it much, he clearly cherishes Lillian. She heard from Stefan that the master even ordered custom clothes from Madame Unette for her. Sophie, surprised, says that Madame Unette must be very important. If the master requested custom-made clothes, it likely means he's planning to announce Lady's return after the victory party today. Then, Sophie adds that everything will change after that, and the scammers will be gone for good. Just then, Mary looks at her watch and remarks that they've been talking a lot. She decides to visit Lady, thinking that she must have finished her dinner and plans to read her a book. Sally volunteers to go with her, but Mary quickly tells her that if she always sticks to Lady, she'll never get her work done. Sally insists that she does her work perfectly, but when they glance at the invoice, it's clear she's done the least work today. Mary, raising an eyebrow, wonders aloud if that's true. Sophie, deep in thought, suddenly asks Sally where she put on duty for ladies' dinner today. Sally, caught off guard, says it was Nisha's turn, but Nisha, confused, thinks it was Sophie's turn. She's sure Lady said she would ask Sally. At this point, Mary looks puzzled, and with urgency in her voice, she asks who took care of Lady's dinner. Without waiting for an answer, she rushes toward the room where Lady is. As she pushes the door open, she calls out to Lady, but what they find shocks everyone. Lady has disappeared. Our girl hides outside, her coat wrapped tightly around her as she thinks to herself. She almost missed the chance. Have they realized that I'm gone? She had to be quick. She had tricked them on purpose, making sure they wouldn't bring dinner, and she had to hurry because the carriage was leaving at dinner time. The Duke could dismiss her at any moment, and she couldn't afford that. In her mind, she recalls the Duke's words, so don't pay too much attention to it. She continues thinking about how important it is to be recognized as the legitimate daughter of Maynard, but she also remembers when the Duke said, for now, she's just a candidate. If someone else, someone resembling Swan, were to appear, the Duke would likely change his mind. She knows she isn't the only one who knows Swan's true identity. Time has passed, and the headmistress must be preparing to act. She's certain that the headmistress will soon reveal that she's a fake. She also remembers Theo's mention of the invitation, but the Duke didn't seem to doubt her or favor her like others did. Instead, he stood at a distance, looking at her with a sad expression. Yesterday, she decided to approach him. She knocked on his door, and when he opened it, he was surprised to see her. She handed him something she had made, saying the garden trees were beautiful and that the gardener had allowed her to take some if it was just a little. The Duke asked if she had stayed up all night making it, and she confirmed that she hadn't slept. She noticed that her hands were injured, and the Duke touched them gently, advising her to get proper treatment. He also told her to ask a maid for help the next time she wanted to make something. Our girl couldn't help but think that her efforts had been in vain. Still, the Duke accepted her gift and thanked her. She felt a sense of relief, realizing that he would never truly be on her side. After all, she wasn't his real daughter. Now, hiding under the carriage, she overhears people saying, "We've arrived." The Duke, seated inside the carriage, looks at the building ahead. It's the palace. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.